Welcome to Rise Untold, where the stories behind the spotlight come alive. The gun, the tuxedo, the car, the watch, the martini, shaken, never stirred. James Bond isn't just a character, he's an idea, a legacy, a standard set impossibly high by the ghosts of legends. Connery, Moore, Brosnan, Craig. Each one wore the number. Each one bled for it. Each one faced the impossible task of becoming something larger than life. And now, it begins again. His name? You may not know it yet, but you will, because 007. First Light isn't just another Bond reboot, that it's a bold rebirth. The world didn't ask for another Bond, but it got one anyway. And this time, he didn't just inherit the license to thrill, he earned it. But how does a newcomer step into the shadow of giants? How does a new face become the face of global espionage? And why is First Light being hailed as the most daring Bond story ever told? Let's rewind. The whispers began in secret rooms. Producers, writers, casting directors, they all knew one thing. Bond had to evolve or die. After Daniel Craig's raw and bruised farewell in No Time to Die, the franchise stood at a crossroads. How do you top a finale that literally kills Bond just to let him live on? You don't just top it. You rebuild from the ashes. And that's exactly what First Light is. A reimagining, not of who Bond is, but why he is. The casting call went out globally, not just for a pretty face or a charming smirk, but for depth, for soul, for a man who could carry the weight of a myth. And then came him a relatively unknown talent, tall, intense, restrained, but with eyes that hid stories darker than MI6 could classify. That he didn't try to be Bond, he just was. Screen tests weren't just auditions, they were battles. And this man, he didn't blink, he didn't flinch. That he stood there in that suit, held the Walther PPK like it was an extension of his hand, and delivered the line every actor dreads. Bond. James Bond. Silence. Then, applause. Not the kind you hear, the kind you feel in your gut. He wasn't just cast, that he was chosen. And from that moment, the mission began. First Light was never meant to be flashy. It was meant to be intimate. Dangerous. Real. That we see Bond before the swagger, before the luxury, before the cold precision. That we meet him as a haunted young agent, stripped of his confidence, burdened with his first killed, no gadgets, no Aston Martin. Just blood, betrayal, and the terrifying weight of a number that will define him forever. 7. That we watch him make choices that cost lives. That we see his first love and his first lost. We see the moments that turn flesh into steel. The director, a fresh voice from independent cinema, refused to shoot action for spectacle. Every punch had purpose. Every explosion had consequence. The opening sequence? A silent infiltration into an embassy gone wrong. 5 minutes. No dialogue. Just tension. By the end, Bond is bloodied, breathless, and broken. But we finally understand him. That's the magic of First Light, that it doesn't just show us Bond. It asks us to become him. And that's what shocked the critics. They expected stunts. They got storytelling. They expected nostalgia. They got Rebirth. The villain? Not a cartoonish overlord, but a digital ghost. Someone who knows Bond's every move before he makes it. A mirror of Bond's own cold logic. That it's not a war for the world. It's a war for Bond's soul. The emotional climax doesn't come from a car chase. It comes from a decision. Kill or forgive. And in that moment, the audience holds its breath. This isn't the Bond we grew up with. This is the Bond we grew into. And the world noticed. Premieres sold out within hours. Early reviews called it the boldest Bond since Casino Royale. And audiences walked away not cheering, but thinking, because First Light isn't just an action movie. That it's a question. Can a man carry a number that demands perfection and still remain human? As the credits roll, Bond doesn't raise a glass. He doesn't kiss the girl. He doesn't walk off into the sunset. He stares into a mirror and whispers something we never thought we'd hear. Who am I if I'm not him? And in that question, he becomes more than a spy. He becomes a story worth telling. So, meet the new Bond. He's not smoother, not cooler, not louder. That he's realer. He bleeds. That he questions. He earns it. 007. First Light. isn't just a film, that it's not just another action-packed blockbuster meant to fill theaters and break box office records, that it's not a sequel. It's not a spin-off, that it's a statement, that it's a whisper to the past, a defiant stare into the future. Dits. The moment the myth became a man again. For too long, James Bond was a suit, that a silhouette, that a collection of tropes wrapped in charm and explosions, the gadgets, the cars, the women, the catchphrases. But under all of that, who was he, really? What did he believe in? What haunted him at night when the tux came off and the mission ended? What did the number 007 cost him? First Light dares to ask those questions, and more importantly, dares to answer them. Because for the first time in decades, we don't just watch Bond move, that we watch him break, that we watch him question everything he's been told, that we watch him stumble. Not because he's weak, but because he's real. This film peels back the armored, it strips away the elegance, it digs through the bravado, and finds the boy who became the agent, before the license to kill, before the mission files, before the code name. There was a choice. And in First Light, we see it, that we live it, that we see Bond in moments he was never supposed to show us. When he doubts himself, when he falters under the weight of the number, when he looks at a target and wonders if pulling the trigger makes him the hero or the villain. This isn't a Bond who enters the room with confidence. This is a Bond who enters with questions, with pain in his eyes and fire in his chest. This is a Bond who bleeds not just from bullet wounds, but from regret. He isn't defined by the number 007. He's burdened by it. And that's what makes First Light a revolution. Because in a world that rewards masks, this film dares to take one off. In a franchise that glorified invincibility, this chapter chooses vulnerability. And it's in that quiet, aching honesty that we fall in love with him all over again. Because haven't we all felt like imposters at some point? Like we weren't ready for the roles life forced us into? Haven't we all stood at the edge of something big, something terrifying, and wondered, am I enough? James Bond does that here. He's handed the title, the mission, the suit, but not the belief that he has to earn that. Not from him, not from MI6, not from the audience, from himself. And in that journey, raw, flawed, and human, he becomes more than an agent. He becomes a symbol of growth, of pain, of rising again. Because the greatest battles aren't always fought with guns. Sometimes they're fought in silence. In mirrors, in memories. We see Bond wrestling with trauma that can't be patched with a tuxedo. That we see him make mistakes, not glamorous ones, but ugly, irreversible ones. That we see the cost of the license to kill. And yet, he keeps going. Not because he wants to, because he has to. Because something inside him refuses to let go. That's the essence of First Light, that it's not about becoming a perfect man, that it's about surviving long enough to figure out who you are underneath the noise. And as Bond stares into the mirror, shaken, wounded, unsure, he whispers the words we never expected. Who am I, if I'm not him? In that one moment, he's not a spy, not a legend, not even a hero. He's just human. And somehow, in that vulnerability, he becomes more powerful than ever. Because the real strength isn't in the kill, that it's in the choice not to. The real victory isn't in saving the world. It's in saving your soul. Oh yes. 007. First Light is a Bond film, but it's also a mirror, held up to all of us.to the parts we hide.to the pain we carry.to the dreams we buried when the world told us we had to be strong. And when Bond rises, from heartbreak, from doubt, from the weight of a name, he isn't just rising for himself, he's rising for you. Because if he could crawl from the ruins of expectation, if he could stand tall in the shadow of legends, if he could face failure, heartbreak, fear, and still take the next step, then maybe you can too. Maybe the pain you carry has meaning. Maybe the silence you live with is strength in disguise. Maybe the mission you're on, even if it feels small, matters more than you know. Because the world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more real ones. It needs people who rise, like Bond did, from nothing, from silence, from the ashes of who he was supposed to be. He became something new, something powerful, something true. And if he can, so can you. This is Rise Untold.